and we pay our respect to elders past, present and emerging. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationships with the land, and we acknowledge that they are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today. And the Council pledge, we seek wisdom and understanding as we face the duties of our united task, praying for the peace and prosperity of our city. Item 2 on the agenda, on leave, there are nil. Item 3 on the agenda, apologies, there are nil. Item 4 on the agenda, declaration by members of a conflict of interest. Are there any declarations of conflicts of interest? Nothing, good. Item 5 on the agenda is confirmation of minutes from the meeting held on the 23rd of January. Do I have a mover? Anyone would like to speak to the motion? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Barnett, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, not necessarily.
That being the case, I won't bother with the summary because I don't think there's much else to add. All those in favour? Against? Item 6 on the agenda, public question time. Doesn't look like there's anyone in the gallery, so there's no public questions. Item 7, petitions nil. Item 8, deputations nil. Item 9, questions without notice. Are there any questions without notice? Councillor Rebecca and then Deputy Mayor Margaret.
Yeah, just briefly, through the chair, I just have a question in regards to the service level discussion. Initially last year, we talked about it probably back in March. Just through the chair,
Yeah.
So through Mayor Larwood, circulated an email to members yesterday explaining the position of service reviews. In essence, or service levels. It's a complicated discussion, depends on whether you're talking about renewal, which is obviously embedded in the asset management planning process. There will be a budget bid supporting improvements in that space. Should council support it, you'll see movement on that front next year. If you're talking about maintenance service levels, then that really is tied to the service review budget that council passed for us as part of this year's budget, which has been sort of seconded sideways into a service review on our depot location, which is currently pending. I hope to have that back to you in the next few weeks. So that's unlikely to be completed this year because whilst there will be some money remaining from that budget this year, if we complete the depot location service review, there is a pressing need to review a street sweeper service. And that's the next component for us because we will need to ask council to replace our street sweeper if we decide to continue that service. And obviously, given that's a pretty significant fleet cost, we want to review that service before we invest in that. So that will be the next cab off the rank. That means, frankly, members, we're not going to get to outdoor maintenance service levels by way of service review this year. And it will be something that potentially we could fund next year and look at if we have the capacity. Or the third part of that is indoor service levels, which is a discussion that members are aware forms part of the customer service charter, which staff have been working on for a while, and to my regret, it's not finished yet. But it's something that we're continuing to move forward with, and frankly, not a huge impact on budgets one way or the other, unless members want to review a full service. Now, if members are interested in looking at a complete service, it'll be the same budget process, not in terms of the workshop progression, but all the same information will be on the table this year. So the recurrent budget will include discretionary and non-discretionary elements, and members are encouraged to raise certain services for discussion if you wish to have a look at them from a budget standpoint. It'll be the same process you've seen last year and the year before. Hopefully that answers your question.
So I'm just going to foreshadow a motion for the education business to address that.
No worries. Anything else, Councillor Becker? Councillor Greg.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I was both delighted and bemused to see our local member Adelaide's announcement on the weekend that Prospect Tennis Club is getting an upgrade of $500,000 through a government grant scheme. I'm curious to know whether we were aware this announcement was happening. I'll ask that question first. I've got a couple of others as well.
I'll be glad to see that.
At first instance, I asked Mr. Delano to give me a sense of when he became aware of that grant being awarded, and then I might ask Ms. Taylor on engagements that we've had with Ms. Wood's office since then. Sam?
Through the Mayor. I became aware through effectively the post on through Instagram. Initially, on review of my emails, I received an email at like 7:15 on Saturday morning from the state government agency responsible for the grant. So
Ms Taylor, can you give a sense then of your engagements with Lucy Wood's office since then?
Yeah, so through the mayor, I also, I guess, heard about the grant through, Ms. Wood's post. I have spoken with her office, expressed, I guess, our willingness to partner, I guess, in an equal terms for future announcements and that kind of thing. So have given that feedback back, and sort of, I guess, also expressed some of the slight frustration that we weren't involved in the event, or that the social post didn't really, I guess, acknowledge the city of Prospect in the way that we actually are fundamentally contributing to that project.
Certainly from my perspective, you can bet that this will be a topic of conversation when the mayor and I next meet with Lucy Wood.
So my second question is just in terms of budget for Prospect. This has been something that's delayed by a couple of years. Do we have a current approved budget for this project, or is it going to be subject to the budget process this year?
Yes to both. Mr. Delena, can you explain the situation with the Prospect Tennis budget?
through the mayor, just to remind members, we did present a report to the 20th Special Council meeting 20th September last year in terms of a revised funding strategy to support the grant. Effectively, there's an existing budget which we needed to top up to get to $900,000, of which was funded through a deferral of the Islington Shed Park project, which is delayed anyway because it's over the top of the existing sort of new drainage alignment for Churchill Road, as well as redirection of these regional and local community infrastructure grant that we had for 245 from that grant program, 350 through the Shed Islington Park project. So it's fully funded this financial year, so ready to go.
But just carrying on from that, that will require presumably a carry forward of that budget into the next financial year. Is that correct, Mr. Delana?
Correct. In terms of obviously we now need to work with the club in terms of an exit strategy from the site. We had told them if we were successful in this program, the intent would be to commence this work in the coming summer season. So from the 1st of September through to the effectively 31st of March would be the window would be signal take works. So that would be 24-25.
I think to your point, Deputy Mayor, until that carry forward is approved, technically there is no budget committed to this for next year.
Thank you. I was just to make that point. It's a very presumptive post, given that the work's not going to be done and spent in this financial year, and we haven't yet commenced budget negotiations for next year. So I'll wait with interest for those debates, discussions, and I'll lead up to a question just so I'm not told that I can't. But just to express my disappointment, as a ward councillor, I presume my fellow ward councillor to my left probably wasn't involved either, or at least invited to the activity of announcing what is a fantastic project, a very simple project, but maybe not the process. But my question leading up to that is the mayor or the CEO likely to meet with the member of Adelaide next month?
Yeah, we will. I think we've got a meeting scheduled in probably for about 3 weeks' time.
Fantastic. That's all.
Thank you. Any further questions without notice? Councillor Barnett?
Yes, will the matter of protection for cyclists along Devonport Terrace be part of council's integrated transport plan, particularly the slow speeding vehicles that seem to have increased, and have it as a shortcut to cut through?
So Mr. Delana, can we take that one?
Yeah. Through the mayor, Devonport Terrace forms part of the Gawler Greenway, pretty significant bikeway through our city. The integrated transport plan will be looking at these significant bikeways and what infrastructure requirements are for improvement. That was a reference within the project brief. Subject to obviously further community consultation will help drive potentially some of the feedback we received from the community. Obviously, you probably had a member of the community reach out to you potentially on that particular issue, but speed and infrastructure associated would be part of that, like before particularly these bike boulevards that we have through the city.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions without notice? In the case, we'll move on to item 10 on the agenda, reports for decision. 10.1 second budget review recommendations on page 4. Do I have a mover?
So moved.
Deputy Mayor Group, would you like to speak to the motion?
Uh, only to say that overall, a little bit of a disappointing result. Obviously, we always like to see more money than this. But certainly understanding some of the pressures on a budget and the reason for the budget review. Beyond that, it is what it is. I won't speak any further on.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sandon, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thanks.
Is there any further discussion, any other points that haven't been raised already? Councillor Nelson.
Just a couple of points, if I may. As councillor Group mentioned, it's a bit disappointing. I understand there's pressures at all times on our budgets and this time of year, but I also understand that there's a number of times that the word increase has been used, particularly in my last 18 months, as everything seems to be an increase, a budget increase, a cost blowing. Just seems to be a lot of times it's been used. I just urge the executive not to be as casual. Maybe I'm perceiving it incorrectly, but it does seem to be a very casual statement that it's just an increase. For this one alone, there's $32,000 increase in cleaning costs, $50,000 in line marking. And we've got to remember this is ratepayers' money. This isn't our money. It's not executives' money. This is ratepayers' money. We've got a responsibility to ensure that we keep the services up at competitive rates. So I think in these ones here, in the 4 or 5 items mentioned, there's $200,000 in increases. No report, which is about 1% of our rates, so not a small amount of money.
Thank you. Any further discussion? In the case, I'll head back to Deputy Mayor Margaret to sum up.
No news.
Thank you very much. Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Item 10.2, Community Battery Opportunity, Department of Energy and Mining. I might recommend suspending meeting procedures for up to 15 minutes should we need to, because we might want to have a discussion around the appropriateness of the sites and any other sites that people might want to recommend. So all those in favour? Against, carried unanimously. So there's 2 parts really to the discussion. The staff have reviewed a number of potentially suitable sites. Given that we're a long way away from this happening, it's probably worth noting. Staff have put forward a number of sites which they triaged and deemed potentially appropriate. 250B Churchill Road, the new LSA has not provided its support, but there are the other sites that we have had recommendations for. Are there any of those sites that the elected members don't think are appropriate? And if not, let's see why not. Councillor Nelson.
These are great initiatives, Chris. But my concern is reading through the papers is if we've got a structure there that's 11 metres long by 4 metres wide by 3 metres high, and they have to have 3 metres clearance around it. That means these things they need space of 17 metres by 10 metres. So my concerns is that for Peppermint Gums and Matthew Reserve, where are they going to go?
I don't know whether we've drilled down to the exact.
I think it's all
Location.
to put these things forward, but if they're not going to fit anywhere, or is there options for smaller ones, or is that's as I say, obviously we've got very little information. We appreciate the executive, which this was thrown on you guys at the last minute as well. But I think I'm just wondering whether we're not being overly optimistic by putting these cases forward when they really can't fit in those two locations.
Councillor Wynne, then Councillor Baker.
I share that same concern in terms of space, like it's quite wide and you're taking a lot of the reserve space for the container. So, put it in there, then, where are people gonna play and do what they normally do there? Though I agree it's a great project, great for, the long-term, all that affordability, sustainability, all that, really appreciate that. I think we're not given enough information. And as long as we can withdraw or with the appropriate information, we can reconsider. And if it doesn't take away any trees, existing trees, that's a concern for me.
Councillor Baker, then Councillor Hart.
Yeah,
And
similar,
Councillor
and it's a shame the reporting actually give the visual, because I mean, it is not just for us, it's for our community. So I think if they superimpose the size and the clearance, because it also applies to flatland as well. So it means that in that 3 metre area, it needs to be cleared as well. And given we've got the small amount of public space available, there, you know, I suppose there could be areas that could be acquired. This is part of the government's desire to stabilise the area. So yeah, I don't know if there's a possibility to lay it on the table and we get the information, or if the decision has to be made tonight. Maybe it's a question through the chair.
I might throw that one to you.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I might ask Mr. Leonard to take this one, but before I do, we're already out of time for this. So, and again, it's an early stage expression of interest. So my understanding, and Mr. Leonard may correct me if I'm wrong here, is that in essence, all we're doing here is inviting the department to consider these sites as possible sites within their criteria. And then if they were agreeable to one of these sites or more, we have a more detailed discussion over whether it fits, how big the battery is, how we locate it, and landscaping and treatments. Mr. Delena?
Through the chair, that's exactly it, Chris. It's really early. We didn't have a lot of time for this. There was a rapid assessment done by staff with respect to every parcel of land that council owns. These were sites that were nominated. Yes, there will be issues of integration we need to work through and come back and work up with the council. We've had to submit, so we've submitted the application. The cut-off was prior to the council meeting. We even have one council meeting cycle to actually get this in the agenda mid-cycle. I think it was a 1 or 2 week turnaround. So they've been submitted. It's really up to us now to potentially go back and withdraw those sites, subject to the members not wanting to proceed with any further feasibility on the options that are presented. One of the things that I didn't articulate in the report, as I could have, was in terms of risks. This relates to lower energy prices for lower income earners. They don't necessarily have to be aligned to the city of Prospect. So we could end up having a battery in our community, doesn't necessarily service a large part of our community, but potentially a neighbouring community. That's potentially a risk in this. So we're quarantining community land and not necessarily receiving the benefit from members of our community. So there's probably a bit more analysis and rigor that needs to go about through that process for that next stage, but it's certainly something I'm conscious of.
Councillor Hollett and then Barnett.
Yeah, look, this report we've received really just gives us that one battery size, 11 by 4. If there was some, if we had a choice where we picked different size batteries for different size sites, and we were able to scale a battery to suit a particular site, I would probably be more able to make a decision, but there are 3 of those smaller sites. I don't think it's appropriate for those large size batteries, and it's and there is a possibility once it's offset from fence line, I mean it might not be fenced itself, but it is the area taken up will be larger than 3 by 4. So I do have an issue with that, and I know it's something that it will come back to council, but yeah, I suppose just having that one sized battery there is a concern for me. I know the city of Marion is, well, I think they're about to take it to council, so they're a bit ahead of us, but there's this 3 by 3. If we had 3 by 3s here, this would be a lot easier to come down to a decision, but that's the issue with me. The size, it's big, and it's taking away our valuable space. Our space is so valued. We're just such efforts to secure pocket parks and spent a few million on Maynooth Road, and then it just seems that we're being given away some as well. So, so really, I can't support. I know I can't support those 3 smaller site Matthews, and
Councillor
Yes,
Barnett.
like in part 4, it says that if we're not we don't put something forward, we know we're not going to get them. But in note 4, that says, should any of the councils nominate sites be shortlisted by the department? Then we'll get a report back, we'll get more information about it, and we can always refuse. You know, or in the meantime, there may be some other thing, like I'm just thinking, about like on Bunnings, site, you know, somewhere down there or near that bridge site. So, you know, the staff, I think, you know, have quickly come up, you know, with some likelihoods. So I think, you know, I take on board, the other comments that he said, and I don't know if we can say that we would prefer to have, you know, smaller ones, whatever, if we've got some preferences. But if we knock this back, well, we know we're not going to get anything. If we do happen to be lucky enough to get shortlisted, well, then we might be able to talk turkey and then we can always refuse. So I think that's the way I'm looking at it. I mean, it's a great opportunity and, you know, yeah, I just think like, grasp the opportunity and then see what happens, what comes out, what falls out. And if it doesn't stack up, well, we don't do it.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I have a couple of things. I guess size matters when it comes to batteries. So I'm presuming there are smaller batteries because that's what's on offer, which is inside. Yep. It's money. I was also going to suggest, as Councillor Barnett did, things like large car parks, which often we use. I'm thinking of the southeastern corner of the Baines car park where there was never a car, but I presume the intent is council sites.
I think it said we have to have control over the land.
Yeah, so I presume that. I then started looking at some other sort of areas that aren't particularly well used in Prospect. So some of the parts with a cemetery as well, which is big corner. Sorry, stable land. Well, there'd be a corner that would be surely. But I just think that there might be some other. Sorry, I had one pin on now. I can't find it, but I was going to suggest I might come back to it. But the other thing I was going to say is, I think it's outrageous that we can't put 215 Church Road in, and I think we can put it up as a non-complying location. But the fact that there's a bureaucrat in the USA says no, not on our terms. There's the Department of Energy and Mines who's saying let's, you know, we want council to do something exciting. I would let that just, you know, have it stay. There might be a reason not to, but I just think we're so screwed over 250 Churchill Road. I think we should put up, because I think it's an ideal location, low cost accommodation, people who are probably going to benefit from the battery scheme. Why should we put it on that side? And it's not to say, you know, put it where the Florida Airlines Prospect is, it's not that at all. But I think we get 2 or 3, that'd be better. So anyway, I'm supportive of it, but I think my view would be to put 250 Church Road. Unless there's a compelling reason not to.
Councillor Stanton.
I agree with everything everyone said. I think what this does gives us a seat at the table for further discussions, keeps us in the loop. It means that if they do change the remit of the process, we'll be a part of that. What might not be ideal now might be completely different in 12 months or 6 months or whatever. But we get to see that, and we get to be a part of that process. I don't mind the list that's put up. There's issues with most of the sites. You know, there's Peppermint Gums and Broadview. I can't see how we'd have to remove trees, and that would kind of defeat the purpose of having a battery from a sustainability point of view. I've been told there's always issues with a lot of the sites with the amount of power that goes past them, whether they have underground power, whether they have the right size cable that goes past. But that's something I'm sure that then we'll have to deal with. I just think we might as well be a part of the process. It doesn't cost, apart from staff time, which I appreciate, they've obviously had to react pretty quickly to it. Apart from some staff time, I think it's a good return on your investment to, you know, see where this path leads.
Thank you. Councillor Marina.
So like I've had a quick look, it's roughly a size of a 40-foot container, like similar to that size. So just imagine that, but taller. And just with the information that Sam's just given us as well, that it might not even benefit our community. Like I'm happy to support it just to get, to go ahead. And if we get shortlisted, we can still have time to make a decision. But yeah, if it's not, if we like do further, research and find that it's not actually going to be, supporting our community, then, probably let another council take it for their community. So that we've got more, so more space, community space.
Couple more quick questions.
Just a quick one. How much council land is there between Bunnings and say the bridge or Regency Road? You know where Bunnings is there, does anyone know how much?
Urban
council
Road
land?
Reserve, none, and certainly
There
not
was
enough to
no-
accommodate a battery that I'm aware of. Sam, can you?
So I know there's a walkway there because I have walked it, but I'm not sure how wide that space actually is, where Bunnings car park and building actually ends. There is land there, I'm sure, isn't there?
Steiner?
Man, that, we started to look at that. I know that one of the key things is about having a reserve. They're a bit mindful of road reserves. But if we could get it out of a potential crash zone, that would be something to look at. In that area, we did look at placing it. We'd have to keep working back towards the rail corridor. One of the key things is about visibility of the actual battery from a community, from a community demonstration perspective, but also from a crime prevention perspective for the actual battery itself. So there's more space back towards the Chair Park in that area, but it's unlikely to be supported. And we don't have a lot of room by the corner, we suspect we'd have to encroach into the embankment of the actual department transport embankment for Regency Road overpass. So very difficult in that area.
So it wasn't, yeah.
It wasn't, yeah.
Last question.
I'm just trying to check whether we considered these three locations. One was somewhere in the Memorial Gardens precinct, so either behind the Croquet Club, somewhere behind the Oval. I know that that's sensitive with Master paying the Oval site, but Croquet Club, that's one. The second one is St John Wood Park. I'm thinking parks actually don't get a lot of usage. Or a third one, which I think Sam's probably just discounted with his comment around crash zones, is that pocket park near cash converters on the corner of Regis in Maple Road. And no one's sitting there enjoying the day, and there's a bit of land there, and we consider those, but that might be too close, excuse me, to a crash zone, I'm not sure, but I was wondering if those three locations in particular, they
Mr. Helena?
Through the chair, staff went through every piece of land that council owns that's on that effectively a reserve. Specifically, I actually couldn't bring up the list, and it's not open to have it, but I just did double check. Just in case quickly, so I apologize, I can get back to you specifically as it relates to those bits of Regency Road. They might necessarily be a public reserve, but part of a road reserve specifically. I'll have to come back to you on notice, but if you look at those sites, there's not a lot of room amongst those significant trees that are there. So it would require fair bit of deforestation. And I think in terms of our rapid assessment, looked at the amenity impact at a high level. Some of those reserves, particularly St John's Wood, is quite small, and obviously that issue with respect to the public use of public land and quarantining public land was certainly an aspect in our considerations. To go to Matthews Reserve as an example, that's about 3,300 square metres, which we're quarantining 170 square metres through this battery, which is about 5%. So that seemed about right as a redistributed number, in the concept of that would be a lot higher than those other reserves.
unless those reserves aren't being choose now.
Yeah.
So St John's Wood, that's,
Yeah.
but yeah,
I'm just going to seek to extend suspension move, so just 5 more minutes, because we've run out of time. All those in favour? Against? Did you have another quick question? And then we're going to get on to.
In regards to, any sound or anything for neighbouring houses, because I suppose people are always concerned about having things next to their house. Because obviously there's temperature controls and things like that. Is that being considered in the report?
Mr. Helena?
The chair, something that we would have to go through the next phase. There hasn't been a lot. We've seen exactly the detail that we've seen in this space. It's in the FAQs that have been developed. Acoustics and obviously proximity to boundaries would be really important. That was one of the reasons why the development manager from the USA rejected one of the reasons put forward as to why they rejected the use of community battery in that corner site, because of the potential acoustic impact, because of refrigeration associated with the battery,
With the information to know.
as well as the fact that it would have a significant impact on the current design of that park. The implications of not removing this from the motion is that that site, it continues to be investigated. We don't actually currently own it, but once we do own it, potentially in the next year and a half, effectively we could do what we want in that space, but we would then need to engage with the community at that time. And that we have to anyway through this engagement process that would occur, and potentially ensure now that we're designing an outcome that allows for that to occur. So there is some modification that we need to occur based on existing landscape plans that have been planned.
Thanks. I think we've pretty much gone around the table at least once, so we've got to, I guess, make a decision on our appetite to move forward with this under some way, shape or form with the sites that have been proposed or anything taken from those, bearing in mind that we're a long way away from anything happening, and there's been a bit of discussion around the table about wanting to be at the table. I don't know whether everyone's on board with that, but I think that a fairly good general consensus was that we want to be at the table and be part of this process. So that having been said, are we happy, given how early on in the process we are we happy to leave the list of sites that have been put forward there, first of all?
I think from my side, is I always have an issue when we're proposing something that we just know won't work. Even though we haven't discussed it, I simply, someone convinced me otherwise, I can't see how you're going to fit it on Spectrum McGovern or Matthews Reserve. I understand Matthews Reserve is 3,000 square metres, but half that's tennis courts. So those, I mean, I have no issue with 250B if we want to put that up. Same with Broadview Football Club, absolutely. If it's not going to work in those other two locations, why would we want to put that forward if they come back and say, yes, we'll do that, and then suddenly the night, oh, actually, it doesn't fit there. So I personally would pull the two museums out, and I would leave, or just the Broadview Football Club there, but that's just my opinion.
What's the general consensus on that as a suggestion?
I think the fact that we do something is less important than what we put up. And I'd be happy if Councillor Nelson wants to pull those out, it wouldn't worry me. As long as we put something up, as long as something goes to them and say we're interested, if we can add and take away, as long as we put one up, even if we just put Broadview up or whatever, as long as we put something up, get our foot in the door, get our seat on the, seat at the table, that's going to achieve what we need to achieve at this meeting.
Is there an appetite for just putting Broadview up around the table? Can I get a nod, show of hands? Any contrary position?
Sorry, and Ovingham.
Ovingham. Oh, the pocket park.
Yeah.
Can I suggest does Ovingham have an issue with power as enough? Is it? No, I mean, I don't think there's any power that goes past that site from what I've been told. That they would have to actually put in. Yeah, there you go. If you want to put Ovingham, I'm happy with that.
Are we happy with Ovingham and Broadview?
I've noticed.
I'm going to go with the general consensus here. So what I'm getting generally, not across the board here, is that the Matthews Reserve and Peppermint Gums come out. Ovingham and Broadview will stay in. What are we doing with 250B? Given that we don't control it at the moment, we will control it. We're putting it in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Poke the bear.
They can buy power.
It's like poke the bear.
I get poked all the time.
He is the man.
Okay, so we've taken away a couple. Is there any appetite to include another site that hasn't been shortlisted already? I don't know whether there is at this point in time. There's been no analysis done by the team apart from the work that they've done, which suggests that these ones were the most likely.
St. John's was mentioned. What was the issue with, is there an issue with trees? Just the trees, was it? Well, you could do. Make it an artwork.
Okay, we need to make a decision, guys. So are we interested in putting St. John's Wood in?
I'm uncomfortable.
No, it's very small. Don't you sit at present?
Can we take this apart as
If you wish, you can take it apart. So, okay, so we've got two sites that we're going to put forward, bearing in mind where we are in the process. Three. Can we get that added into the motion and then taken away?
So, the remove putting down on that end. So members will add in the full address in the final minutes. So that'll be in there.
And how are we going to put in there that we want 250B trucks, I think?
Just delete,
Yep, so we've just moved it.
delete 3, it's delete the entire part 3 and the bit underneath it, should be right. We're just adding this, we're just removing 2 and leaving 250B in, is that right?
Yeah, but what we'll do is leave it because 250B was excluded, so we need to add 250B, so we'll leave 3.3 there and have 250B in
No,
point.
250B is included in the report. We pulled it out of the recommendation because we found out after the report.
Okay,
So
all right,
it's in the report.
okay, my apologies.
So you can just delete the entire 0.3, Gwen.
Right.
Yep. That's a 0.4, 0.3. Should work.
Okay, let's go back into session now. So there's been a request to take in parts, which I'm happy to do so. Do I have a movement for part 1? Keeping in that group, which I just speak to the motion.
Look, I will move it. I mean, we're a long way from seeing something happening I presume that if someone comes up with a really good location after this meeting, it's will not locked to this forever, that I'm sure there'll be some negotiation we have with the to have one time. But as I said, well, I think we're a long way from doing this. It would be good, and maybe technology will change over the next 12 or 18 months if this happens. Whether we're just talking about the dairy part of it, whether we could make it something that's, you know, you can put down the middle of Galway Avenue, there's, maybe technology will allow us to do something different with it by the time we get actually doing it. I presume it's some time away, but I think conceptually it's a great idea. We should be part of it. And I think anything that helps lower income home owners or home resident is a good thing. So
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? I'll go with Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, I think it's a great initiative. I think it's a very good idea. It's unfortunate with Prospect having the least amount of open space in the state. It makes it very difficult for us to do this, but I think, with what we can put forward, I think is, I do support it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Anything that hasn't already been covered? Councillor Backer.
Yeah, look, Councillor, I think it's a really great concept. What the shame is we haven't really engaged our community. And I think, it's not that far on the state because, people want to know is it going to make what's the big impact. And the report, which goes out to the public, didn't give any of that. And I think the additional information we've been given through the early discussions is that the likelihood is the benefit is to other, people outside of the area, which is fine because we're part of the Eastern Regional Alliance and, people don't see council without them. But, this term again of Peppercorn Rec, we've eliminated all our other reports and talks about leasing and licensing. And the thing is, if we're delivering value, it has to be, and I think, we just need to be really careful when we're putting things like this out in the public realm. So I'll support 1 and 3, but I might support 2. And it's partly down to the report and not having a workshop prior to the discussion. Otherwise, I'd be more open to throwing them out.
Yeah, I think the staff made it fairly clear they would have liked to have had more time. Councillor Group, shall I sum up? Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Yes, I think there is quite a number of individuals and residents and associations that have expressed interest in council pursuing community battery. Most probably more the fact, about it to be a community battery. I think the notion of being a shared neighbourhood sort of type of battery, but nevertheless, people have contacted me and said, interested in us being part of that. But and also it's about we in part 2 we support sites nominated by administration as possible locations. So it's possible if we got possible underlined there. So I think we're wanting to have a dip our toe in, see what comes out. If we don't like it, our community, generally is not too happy with it, well, then we don't go ahead with it.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg, would you like to sum up?
Yeah, look, this commits nothing about having a conversation, so I think we need to put that in context, and I think it's an exciting conversation. Just to Councillor Barnett's point, and when I first saw this on the agenda, I was thinking with the local street battery that, 5 people could go and live and get some power with, in that way. It's clearly not that, but hopefully this will actually generate a conversation, no pun intended, to have a conversation about what does local street batteries look like in the city of Prospect, like some other councils are doing. So that could be another conversation for another time, but certainly support this.
Thank you. Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Part one. Part one. This is part one. What? Against? Carried unanimously. Oh, sorry.
Two,
You're in favour of?
I'm in favour of
Part one. Okay. Carried unanimously. Part two. Do I have a mover? Councillor Stan, I'll try to speak to the motion.
Yeah, I would, and I'm sort of carrying on from other speakers here. There's part two, what locations? With the exception.
Something wrong?
of going
Oh,
back.
sorry, it's all right. Point of order, I thought we just voted in that part two.
Yeah.
That's no extra speak on it.
We have one mover and one second of the whole lot.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just voting.
Good point of order.
Section 993.
That was 994.
That was last one.
Okay, so then we're voting on part two. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried. And voting on part three. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thanks, everybody. Good conversation. Okay, item 10.3 on the agenda, quarterly project update, February 2024, a very comprehensive report. Recommendations on page 42. Do I have a mover? Deputy Mayor Mark Greg would like to speak to the motion.
I love this report every quarter. It's lots of information, and I'm going to take the opportunity of moving it just to ask one question. Apologies, it's a bit of a circular conversation we're having. It's in relation to the rotunda. I noticed that the cost for the rotunda is getting more and more going up faster than the price of eggs at the moment. So I understand we're going out to tender again. I've had a bit of interest from residents saying what's going on. I guess my question around this is, do we have a sense of a realistic timeline that we're going to get that back out to tender, prices back? Because I feel it's not going to be this financial year. So I want to check that maybe as a question. Mayor.
Mr. Delano.
Yeah, I think there was two questions there. One was about effectively prices of the rotunda going up, and then obviously the other one was about timing of delivery. With respect to the price, I need to be sensitive because we're trying to limit what I can disclose publicly, but I can give you some broad numbers. Effectively, we went to market and there were ranges of prices potentially up to double the revised budget that we had put in, and that was on council utilising the Heritage SA panel of preferred contractors. We tried to negotiate with a preferred tenderer and value manage the process down to the best we could, and potentially carve scope out and do it in other ways. That wasn't really successful, and we were in a position where we just can't physically move forward with the tender. The council. So we are in the process of abandoning that procurement. We are going to go to market. The intent is next week, in terms of revise our acquisition process, open it up the field, seek contractors that are registered with Department of Transport. They have a pre-qualified panel at the lower end, but in that lower end, those contractors still have heritage experience. And we're opening up the field. Basically, it's beyond that. We do believe the initial prices were heavily inflated, and that's probably because the contractors rely heavily on subcontractors as well with the works. So we believe we will have an improved outcome. Whether or not we're going to get it down to what our quantity surveyor had estimated was a fair and reasonable amount, time will tell. But what it does mean from a timing perspective is that we've got, as you referenced, in that group, that won't be able to deliver now this financial year. It's likely that we're going to lose effectively another 2 to 3 months because of the time frame associated with tendering. We're going to lose 8 weeks with that process, and then the contract is going to mobilise to the site. So we probably lost a 3 month lost time. So effectively September is now where we're ending up with a revised timeline. Replacement.
So just one other thought or question on this one. Can I just double check the only heritage value, maybe value is the wrong word, but the only heritage components of the rotunda is the lace work. Is that correct?
I understood that the posts were also heritage protected. Mr. Delano, are you able to answer that question?
So I might I need to be involved in conversations with joint assessment manager in this space because it's a bit more complex than that. We've got an existing approval in place in respect to that project.
Mr. Eskandari?
Through the mayor, my understanding is that the whole structure is considered to be heritage because of those heritage elements. So the lace work, the molds around the columns, the original, also the seating is original. And because of that, the whole structure is considered to be heritage.
So just don't want to pursue it too much, but one last question on that. So in terms of the seating and the other components of that, I understand the lace work came from St. Helens House. The seating, given that this was constructed in the 70s, I think, was the seating retrieved from St. Helens House as well? Is that what's got a heritage component to it?
Mr. Leonard, Mr. Eskandari, can you answer that?
Through the mayor, I think in the workshop you heard it from Mr. Husky, who's the heritage architect, that he couldn't have 100% tracked those elements, but because of being from that era, they were assumed that they were from the original house.
Okay, thank you. I'll take that and consider it. I just think we're tiptoeing around a heritage item, which is, I certainly don't want to discount any heritage to it whatsoever, but it feels like some of it is got a bit of a question mark about whether it is a heritage item. The other bits could easily be taken off and used in another construction building. But we're being penalised by heritage consultants saying, or builders saying, we're going to, potentially the cost is higher because it's a heritage structure. Most of it might not be. So anyway, we'll wait and see how the next tender process goes. Thank you for that. Beyond that, I have no other questions.
Were you moving or was it a question?
I was moving.
Right.
Sorry, I'll move the motion.
Point of order.
Section.
I'll have to look that up. Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Margaret. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Trinwin.
And I'd like to speak as well. Yeah, so that's great to hear that that's going back out because obviously we had a lot of feedback from the community that was going to be costing way too much. And I recently had someone speak to me on Friday about it too, and he was not happy with the price. So I'm glad we're going out to tender for that, and hopefully price can significantly reduce. Just some questions. We've got the bus shelters and we've allocated 50,000. It said a limited number of stops can be addressed. So does that mean that there is more, but we can't do it because it's not DDA compliant? So I'd like for us to have a look at it and make all bus stops DDA compliant. So is this only like a limited number that we can fix, not all of them in prospect?
I would assume that we're constrained by budget. No matter what our desire might be to do more, we're constrained by the budget that we've got in place.
Yeah. So like, can we get more information about this and how many more bus stops, and like, would that be something that can report back to us? So I just feel like they should all be compliant.
Yes, we'd love to do them all, but we don't have the money to do them all in 1 year. That's the issue. Mr. Delano, can you expand upon that? Oh, Mr. Eskandari?
The mayor, we have 60 non-compliant bus shelters. It's a bit more complex than that.
When it's non-compliant, what parts of that make it non-compliant?
They vary. So it might be tactiles, footpaths for the shelter itself. The shelters are operated by council, or contractor in media, and DIT and their contractor. So there is a bit of complexity there in terms of the management of the shelters. What we've done, we've assessed them all and considered the existing contracts and rates. And with the $50,000 that we have, we can make 13 of them, I believe, compliant this year. But it's going to be a multi-stage program. So unless council is willing to spend $500,000 or so to make them compliant in 1 year. It probably needs to be staged of a.
So it says renewing contracts with the bus shelters. So is that advertising, like someone like can put the money in?
Yes, Media, we had a old contract with the previous company who were bought out by Media, so they maintain the shelters and they advertise. They use them for advertising. We are in negotiation to renew their contract and get some of the advertising share. But they won't maintain the footpath or they're not concerned about DDA compliance as such. Some of these bus shelters are operated by the ITMB contractor. Again, we're not concerned about the footpath and the tactile, but that's council responsibility to make those compliant.
Alright, and then I had, so for the Churchill Road drainage upgrade, stage 1, we had a quote for 4.3 million from SA Water, and our estimate was 204,000. That's a huge difference. Can someone explain that to me?
Mr. Lennon?
I take that one initially and with the mayor. Obviously, when we were working through the initial cost estimate, that was the effectively the price, the rate that was allocated. We've actually physically gone to SA Water and they've come back with a price. Now, clearly, we're not going to be moving forward with a project just which has been covered, which effectively the entire budget allocated for the drainage project. So, as a design team, we worked pretty hard to look at alternate locations and come up with a number of different other options that would potentially enable us to pass beneath the actual water main rather than actually undertake the adjustment. It just means that we might need to chase grade down the HEP channel to make it work. But effectively, through our tender process, we're actually providing some options for the tenderers to go further and explore with their design consultant they'll bring onto the team, at which point we believe we can actually end up with an outcome that's within our budget, if not below the allocation.
Yeah, I did see that HEP channel investigation design. And then also with the Islington's shared path upgrade in that area, it says that we are thinking about doing this temporary sill, but it's not recommended. So can we get an update of what possibly can happen in that area for now? If we're not going to do that, what will be the least we'll be doing in that footpath of the Islington train station?
So yeah,
Mr. Lennon?
Through the mayor, we are, as members may recall, we are in the process of working with RenewSA, potentially to bring forward that section of that pipe that's actually underneath that portion of track. And we actually have now received a price from RenewSA as a contractor for that. We are going to validate the value for money outcome because that's on face value. We're going to tender for our bit of drainage, but also pricing up the rest of the project to go through to Charles Street, of which we can then pull out this component from our preferred tenderers, our preferred tenderer with respect to whether we're achieving value for money. Once we have that, we are in a position to put that back to council, and we are making a budget allocation in 24-25. We've sort of with the workshop presented through the course of March that we have a budget allocation towards progressing with that body of work. So at this point, I caution members from investing in a temporary seal. The likelihood within the coming 6 months we'll be digging it up. But possibly some additional maintenance if it was required, go in there and just effectively address some minor areas as per our normal practices.
Yeah, because we've got the $20,000 funding for the bicycle fund, so we'll just wait to use that when we're doing the works in the next year then. So we won't be using that funding this year.
Through the mayor, that $20,000 relates to design.
Yeah.
We've actually got some grant funding from the state government to design the shared path, includes lighting the path and landscaping.
Yeah.
So we'll actually expend that in
Okay.
the coming 6 months, starting from the award of contract in roughly about April, I think, subject to it being within the realms of possibility within our budget. So hopefully we end up with a situation we can just progress to award. If that's the case, in 6 months, we would have effectively designed a solution and progressed some works on the ground.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you. Yeah, that is it.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion, any points that haven't been raised already? People would like to bring up. Briefly from the chair, I think this is a great report, very interesting reading, and if anyone asks you what council does, then this is a pretty good representation of what council does. There's a huge volume of work in there. This doesn't cover everything that we're doing, of course, but it is certainly a very strong indication of how busy the team is and how much we're achieving. So congratulations to the report authors. Let's head back to Deputy. Sorry,
Second,
we've got a second already. haven't we?
have we?
Yeah.
All right, my apologies. It wasn't up. Yeah, that's all.
Seconded, councillor Twin. If there's no further discussion, I'll head back to councillor Backer for some further discussion.
Yeah, just a quick question. Just a concern, it doesn't actually appear to be on the public website.
It absolutely is, because I downloaded my version today and it has the report attached. I'll validate that right now.
It wasn't originally.
I wasn't in the.
Just was on the agenda.
Off the agenda.
Yeah.
My mistake.
Head back to Deputy Mayor Mark Groot to sum up.
So some,
Disappointing. Let's put it
another 4.5%.
at least. Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Okay, item 11 on the agenda, general business of an urgent nature. Does anyone have any urgent items? We have two. We'll go with councillor Backer first of all.
Thank you. I've got a motion that might come up on the screen. I can read it down if you like, or. Thank you very much. Okay, so just following the question without notice, I'd just like to request the administration to incorporate a confidential session within the 2024-25 budget to review budget review workshops to discuss a potential service level review in light of cost pressures associated with inflation, the purchase of the main road site and community expectations. So I'll just speak to that briefly. Look, and I thank the CEO and the manager of governments for getting back to me with this. You may have heard over the last 12 months asking about service levels, and look, if we were a shop and we were selling books, for example, we want to know how many customers coming in and what kind of books they're selling. If we're doing gift wrapping, if we're making money, what our electricity costs are, what our promotions are. And it's no different for a council. The difference with council is that we do that with the community. And so service levels are things like how often we get our roads swept, how often the doggy bags are replaced at the parks, how quickly people get back to us with correspondence and things like that. So with a new term of council, I guess there was a hope that we'd have a look at those service levels because we have to fund them. And what tends to happen is if there's a shortfall, so for example, the audit committee addressed the change in contractor because the toilets weren't good. And they only know that because people report it. So I'm encouraging our other elected members, if you see any problems, please report them. Otherwise we don't know. The other thing about service levels is it's the way we do business. And currently there's a mix, obviously we've got staff and consultants, and we also might have contractors as well. The contractors also need to be managed. And I think you'll sort of see some of these projects, how the projects are managed and what the prices are and that. So service levels are really, really important. And I know we have been, and it is full on, but we've had previous councillors in terms that will go line by line through, each dollar spent. And I'm quite happy to do that to see what the money where the money's going and what residents are getting for it. Because the next budget we're going into is 2 years. We're locking ourselves into 2 years. And the default tends to be, there's no change in service levels. But I can't, with good faith, go, we've just bought this property. We've already had the director talking about how we're going to have to get consultants to fund that project. At the same time, street sweeping to be dealt with. We've got to manage apartments and all that kind of thing. So our community is changing and we need to manage service levels. And I think there's a good opportunity to do it. So it's not just around the fringes service levels, it's the kind of things that say, okay, well, actually, we might to look at the way we do this whole service and give the community a chance to be able to have this discussion. Now, I'm anticipating amendments to the motion. The reason I put in confidential, because I'm certainly not keen on confidential, there was feedback from the CEO about the sensitivity around looking at service levels. So obviously one of our biggest costs is our people, but it doesn't necessarily mean to say we, you know, are looking at whole areas, but it might just be that we have a look at how we can do things better. So it might be systems and processes, and are we relying on contractors? Should we look at these things? And I think it's really important that, you know, as a new council, we can actually have those discussions ahead of this 2-year commitment for funding. So I'd encourage you to either support the motion or variations to the motion to have this discussion as part of the budget review workshops.
Before we go any further, I'm happy to approve that it does meet the criteria for being an urgent item, because I think that the timing that you've suggested can't wait until the next council meeting, so I'm happy to approve it on that basis. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Stanner, would you like to speak to the motion?
I'm happy to second it, to support Councillor Back.
Is there any further discussion points that haven't been raised so far? Deputy Mayor Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move an amendment and just for full transparency, Councillor Back is aware that I'm going to move this amendment tonight. So I think the motion is good. I think it stands on its own 2 feet. However, I don't think it should be in confidence. I think from a transparency perspective, we should only ever go in confidence. Where we should go in confidence, let's have a politician answer, but I don't think this kind of passes the pub test in terms of not being able to have transparency with the public to see what we're talking about. So the amendment would be to remove the word confidential, the only amendment that we make.
I need to seek the approval of the mover and the seconder to remove the word confidential. Okay, then we can consider it a variation to the motion.
Which have nothing else to say, but I support the motion.
Great, I'll head over to Councillor Trindle.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, if I'm being a new elected member, I think this would be good for me to see and understand. So service levels and then beginning that core part of business.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Tweeney.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to a workshop or a session where we can sit down and have a conversation and, you know, put things on the table and just say that, you know, where service levels are at. I think it's a really good idea, and I think it's something that we've been asked, like, returning members have been asking for. I just have a question. When do you, and to the CEO, when do you anticipate that we'll have a session?
Yeah. So members, I've got to be honest, this is not what I expected. When I heard the debate that we're having essentially a review of service levels in a workshop sometime in the next few weeks. Members have read the email I sent you. This is going to be exceedingly difficult to achieve unless you define the services you want to review and give us a sense of what's on the table. We are an exceedingly complex business with 90 plus staff delivering services to 22,000 residents, 109 kilometres of roads, 10,000 street trees. We are a complex business, members. I need some guidance in terms of what your expectations are here, because this is going to be very difficult to achieve. 3 budget workshops we have planned are already pretty much full in terms of content. So I'm anticipating this will be a 4th workshop. Clearly, this must come before the draft budget is prepared. So we have a limited amount of time, and I suspect this will require us to jam another workshop sometime in the next few weeks. That might not be on a Tuesday, members, so be ready for that. But I need some definition, please, members, if you can. Help guide me in terms of where we're going to go with this workshop. What's the services that you want to review? That will help us.
Yeah,
Councillor
that would be the, exactly what the CEO said, because I think there should be some, indication from elected members, about what service level review is. The CEO said, I mean, we could end up with 1,000 service level reviews. You're going throughout the entire organisation. I think there needs to be some, is it, how many, we get sprayed, like how many, we did the library, runs a few years ago. We had to have a consultant, so we had to have money in the budget to get a consultant to review it. And that was, at the end of the day, there were some good things that came out of that, but again, there is a cost to do this, and I think it's fair enough. I don't know how do we manage it? Do we do a survey of residents and businesses? We sort of do to some degree level reviews every time we do a budget process. So yeah, I think it would be helpful if elected members had some ideas of what they might, like to prioritise, as the CEO said, to give some guidance. Yeah, so that's the only thing that I would really be saying. I mean, our community expectations have grown enormously as a modern society, and what they expect us to do. And I might add that all the recent surveys that we've done, it seems they are mostly prepared to pay for an increased service level. So I think I think if we had some guiding questions from the CEO or the management team, just some guiding questions, so that could help us focus a bit more as elected members.
I think it might be useful to recommend suspending meeting procedures for 15 minutes so we can discuss this and see what we can nail down. So all those in favour of suspending meeting procedures for 15 minutes? Against, takes us through to 8:21. So at the moment, the way that this reads, we're reviewing every service level that we offer, which is not feasible. Can't understand.
It occurs to me that we really only need to discuss the ones that are in danger of being reduced. If something at the service level is going up, that seems to be fine if it's going to stay the same. If something is, on the chopping block or can be reduced in a way that residents are going to notice, they're the ones we want to debate. So that wouldn't be, so if there's 1,000 services, surely we should be able to, there should be some indication that these ones are going to actually be affected. So we can reduce it hopefully to that number.
I'm not sure whether it works like that. It's a reasonable suggestion, but I'm not sure how practical that is.
It might be a way of triaging what they're about.
So members will recall the process of running past you. That process has reviewed 3 specific services: economic development, events, and the library team. Those 3 were all worked through workshops in response to requests from elected members through those budget processes. They were difficult processes. Members will recall they were challenging. Not a reason not to do it, but those reviews were initiated by identifying services that members wanted to look at. With libraries, we came back and talked you through the cost of delivering the various programs. We gave you a sense of attendance at the library. We gave you a sense of use of the toy library and numbers of a range of services that the library delivered, and we gave you data on that. That was an enormous amount of work for staff to compile in a very short period of time. But it did guide members in making a decision in that case to retain that service. With economic development and events, obviously the events are pretty transparent. Members know what we did, and members made a conscious decision to ask what we could do with less money. If members who were here at the time will recall that a particularly brave councillor sitting around this table at roughly this time of year, a few years ago, said, "Mr. CEO, what could you do with 50% less budgeted events and economic development?" And finally, we were able to come back with some ideas, and that guided a change in that budget. Those are challenging discussions. We're prepared to have them, but we need to know what we're talking about. We don't want to have that essentially to do that body of work for 10 or 50 services, you know what I mean? So give us a sense of where you want us to go, give us a sense, give us some goalposts and some guidelines here, and we'll see what we can do. Yes, it's the scope right now is what we're concerned. I'm asking you to consider.
Councillor Nelson.
We try and think out loud, always help, but I think about some other experiences I've got in a similar thing with this with other boards, and you think about the procedures, procedures and policies. We have 74 policies for a certain company that we say we're going to review 25 of those policies every year. It'll be good to understand how many services we actually provide, and whether that can be split into sort of saying, let's review, these 20 every year and then these 20 next year. So they're actually reviewed every 3 years. I don't know if that's what we're looking at or something there, but we need something, because obviously we're coming into a budget time and we don't know whether certain services be more funding or less. So I understand where Councillor Baker's coming from. Fantastic idea to get this going. Again, timing's not ideal, but is it possible to perhaps, again, just think out loud, to get a list of the services that we provide and for the council to review them and say, well, look, Mr. CEO, you want to have a look at this, and this, and do that in the next 6 weeks or whatever it is.
So through the CEO, through the mayor, on the CEO, through the mayor, theoretically, we can give you a list of services. We have a list of services. It's at a pretty micro level, and it's somewhat out of date. We've been endeavouring to review it. Again, members, I addressed this in my email yesterday, the work that's been going on in that space. Members, again, returning members, and for the benefit of new members, we had a service review, it was called a service review, undertaken by our former internal auditors, BDO, in late 2021. It's one of the first things I addressed when I walked in the door. BDO addressed the need for us as a council to consider a systematic program of service review. I'm with you, Councillor Nelson. I'm accustomed to this at other councils, but the other councils I worked at are much larger than this. At Ockapringa, we have a dedicated organisational effectiveness team led by a manager and had 4 staff. We clearly can't afford that here. We have established a service review budget for the past 2 years. We've been struggling to get to the first review that BDO recommended, which is a review of our maintenance function. BDO's recommendation, which I think was a very sensible one, was to focus on those cost of services that is highest, because of course small percentage gains in those services create large dollar outcomes for the community. That's why I've been pushing hard my director to move a service review forward in the maintenance space, but we've again struggled this year because we bought Main North Road right before the end of the financial year, and we've assigned that money over to the depot location service review. And as I've mentioned to members, well, with what's left, we won't deliver the full service review this year. So what we're instead going to do is look at street sweeping, because it has that big fleet replacement cost attached to it. So we're doing the best we can with the budget we have. In principle, if we had a recurrent budget for service reviews, and I could assign that to an officer whose job it was to put forward a program that went through, for example, the corporate team was reviewed by the audit committee every time we got those reviews through, and we were doing a couple of years. That I feel would be an ideal pace of review for a council like ours. And for those reviews then to hopefully lead to some discussion around efficiencies and savings that could then be incorporated into the budget for, support rate relief in some way. That's how other councils do it. I'm trying to get there. We've been trying to get there, but we've had some obstacles between us in terms of pursuing that. So there's no lack of will in this space from the administration. I will also say that we've actually managed, in spite of the fact that we have that budget, to perform a number of service reviews across the business. We've already undertaken a service review in the customer service space. We've undertaken a service review. Ms. Taylor, help me out here in the CHIT space. Any others? Those are the two I can think of.
Yeah.
Both of them, CHIT was related to audit outcomes, and obviously the the cuts to CHIS funding required us to trim our belts and try and accommodate the most service we could within the available budget with the CHIS reforms that took place 18 odd months ago. And we've managed to do that with no significant reduction in services. Obviously, we've stopped providing in-house care, but that was a decision taken by council at the time, which I think in hindsight probably wasn't a bad one, although not everyone around this table, I'm sure, would agree with that. And certainly with customer service, we've been able to achieve some benefits there in terms of service levels to the community. We haven't generated any savings, but we feel improved the quality of service by consolidating a range of services between the library and customer service.
Yeah, so and that was reported back to council, sorry, through the mayor, in October last year, where we highlighted that customer service review was done. We rejigged the roster, we made some changes, we brought on a different team leader that can work more strategically. We are establishing how I guess, habitation with the library and how they're doing shared duties in that process. So that's all been that.
Final point to make here is that I'm waiting to sign this document. We've been working for the past few months on a service review policy, which will essentially require any position at or above the level of team leader within the business. If we have a resignation at that level and that person's been in the position for more than a certain period of time and that service hasn't been reviewed for more than a period of time, we use the salary savings from that position being vacant to conduct a service review before we refill the position. That won't always happen. If it's a mission critical role that's going to have a significant service impact, we'll use the salary savings to perform a service review, but we may replace the position anyway. But the policy requires that managers give consideration to that and that it happen unless I approve otherwise. So we're trying to find a way to engineer service reviews into how we do business without impacting the budget significantly. But I think for those bigger services like outdoors and maintenance of fleet, these things cost a lot of money. We probably need a budget to look at some of those things on a periodical basis. I know it's a long answer to your question, but hopefully you can see that we haven't been idle on this at all.
How many of our, sorry if I continue, how many of our services can we, sounds a bit silly at a high level, but how many of our services can we look at through a data dump through the ERP or the CRM system? I asked that, obviously the way technology grows, I mean, we've got systems in my workplace where we know what our service levels are by percentage of fill ratio and everything else. I would have to think that the council would have some sort of data where we can do a data dump of how many complaints we've got, how many phone calls, how many emails.
Yes.
Is that not something that we can have to get a report on?
Through the chair, you are. It's in the CEO update.
Yeah, the CEO update. So I have provided you, I think, a couple of months ago now, but I gave you a CRM update. So that was raw data on where that was. Mrs. Vayner and I are currently reviewing that with the team to look at what those service delivery timeframes are. It actually provides you with, say, for example, how many dead animals we pick up, how many graffiti only had 3 in 3 months complaints. So it actually captures all that. I do have the information that was reported through in the, it was called the CX Champions update, and that gave you all the information on how many people come to our front counter, how many phone calls we get, how many times, how many are missed, how many, that kind of thing. So I have all that information and I can certainly report that back again.
We're working on format. We're working on how to put the sense testing service levels as they attach within the system, because some of the service levels in the system are not set. The system isn't the best, if I'm blunt. It's one of the reasons why there's a budget in this year's budget to look at improving that. We're doing the best of what we have, but yes, we do have some of that data on a range of services. And it is, Ms. Taylor maybe can circulate the link to that, or we can identify which CRM that is and can direct you to.
I can just ask one more last one, and I'm sure you don't need to take over from council about that, but I guess and whether we can or we can't, I guess what I'm sort of saying is that having it once a month and once in a couple of months is good. I would love to see 2023 versus 2023 versus 2021 versus 2020 to see if our service is getting better or worse. That's the only way we're going to be able to gauge that. Having a look at a 1 month snapshot and say, well, we did well that month. Was that better or worse than last month? How do we improve that? We would need more funding, and then we're going to find it as we look at historical data.
So have we got trend data available in the system?
Yeah, look, I can't guarantee you what it was like before our time, but we've certainly been trying to manage it. And part of the customer service review was putting that, team leader for customer service that doesn't work in the business, but works on the business and has taken a holistic review of, I guess, capturing that data in a more accurate and authentic way that we can report on. So I can't guarantee what's before my time because the system is clunky. But I can, and that's why I sorted out and I sort of, I guess, prefaced it with this is just raw data. This is just what's out the system. So,
For example, some of that data has reports of 100% compliance or 100% non-compliance in areas where I know for a fact those numbers can't be accurate. So there are some challenges behind the firewall in the system that we need to work through in terms of providing that trend data, because it's not as easy as just downloading it and putting it in a spreadsheet and graphing it out or putting functions in and making it report back. It's difficult. We'd love also to build live dashboards in Power BI for you, but we don't have enough confidence in what's in the system to that stage.
We're still okay for another couple of minutes. Councillor Back.
Look, I'd happily accept further amendments, but I just, as it's written, incorporate a session within the budget review to discuss a potential service review. So basically what we're doing here, and you can see by the question we're getting asked around the table.
Service review process.
Potential service review. So pretty much kind of what we're doing on the fly here, but with the information that we have already. Because I think you can hear by the comments around the table that we're not clear on where our services are at. You know, I certainly don't feel confident going into budget discussions with at least, okay, this has been reviewed, this has been reviewed, this has been reviewed, this has been reviewed. This is what's coming up, this is what's been delayed or retimed, and going, okay, we've got all this in front of us, and at this said discussion, we might say, well, you know, actually, this is really important that this is looked at. So, and this is the only chance we're going to get, because if we go into budget discussions and it locks into 2 years, you know, and I'm just going to bring it back to real basics, okay? Just say, okay, like, you know, down in Charles Hagen Reserve, we're only going to change the doggy bags twice a week and change the, you know, empty the bins 3 times a week. Whereas we know we've got a lot of development happening down there, so we actually need to be providing 10 lots of doggy bags and changing the bins 4 times a week. So it's more just going, okay, what areas do we need to look at? And I'm happy to be my group.
I'm going to have to seek leave the meeting to suspend meeting procedures for a further 9 minutes. Take us through to 8:30. All those in favour? Can I just go back to Councillor DeBacker first of all? Just to confirm, are you requesting a service level review process be looked into, or are you requesting?
And that's the thing, it should be a decision.
But it's your motion, so I just want I want to get to the bottom of what your motion's actually calling for.
So I just wanted to take a pause because I had asked several times and I had anticipated a discussion on service levels to happen in March, which is not going to happen. And I know there was an email sent to elected members, but that's not sent to the public. The CEO report is not public, which is why I'm trying to articulate it. And it would be obviously welcome if something could be taken as part of it. It's, you know, so the public's aware. Because it's the only chance we get as an independent body to go, okay, well, do we gold plate this? Do we not do this? Do we postpone this? And it's the only chance we get. And I think this kind of discussion would have been better had in a workshop than a council meeting. So I guess this is what this is.
So you're not calling for a line by line service level review, you're calling for a discussion around a process. Is that
I'll express it as I agree. So basically, to discuss a potential service review with our fellow councillors in a workshop. So it may be out of that workshop might come
a plan? Okay,
So then obviously to be informed of that workshop, it'd be great to just. put it- well,
I'll go with councillor first question.
Just two things, I'll try not to give that.
No, you can
Um,
just do it. Fine.
I've just been trying to scroll through my emails back to 2012, because we actually have done this once before.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to find the context of how we do that. And it actually was, how many times do you want a street to go, a truck to go down street to street, how many times you pick up, how many times pruning trees, whatever it is. It was quite comprehensive and it is time consuming, there's no doubt about that. I think in my excitement to take the word confidential out, I probably overshot the mark a little bit in terms of not having this ring fenced a bit more than it could be. I think I'll leave councillor Nelson to make any suggestions about to make in terms of how we do it, but I probably do read it as a broad conversation as opposed to getting into all the detail. Because I think that detailed conversation is probably a year-long conversation, we might have in different areas over time. So I think to the intent that councillor Bateman was trying to make this a broad conversation on the importance of that. If it is intended to go line by line to every service review, I mean, we just can't do that anyway. But I think councillor Nelson might have a suggestion.
Councillor Nelson, your solution.
Hope so. No, look, the intent of the motion, I think, is very, very good, but I think understanding from the feedback from the CEO that it can be quite a big thing to look at. So what I was going to just suggest to councillor Baker is, if, without taking the major part away from the motion, is if we were to change line 2 to say to discuss the service level review process, and then to set a process or a plan in place of how we review service levels. Would that suffice the intent of the motion?
Some might say, we've already got services review process.
But we don't, there's no regular.
Yeah, this is
service
what
level
I'm,
reviews.
yeah.
That's what I'm saying about policies, is that we need to set in place that we might look at, these 5 reviews this year and these 5 next year. So we ensure that these service levels get reviewed every 2 years or 3 years.
Yeah, okay, I'd be happy to step that. But.
I'll wait for you.
Yeah. Understanding. Okay, so councillor Back, are we happy for the words of the motion to be, can we just get those in there, please? Councillor Nelson, do you want to furnish us with those words? What- Yeah, we can change the words now,
Okay.
but then we've got a second approval of the mover and the second in formal session.
And then process. Please. So to discuss the service level review process. Yes.
Okay. Unless there's any further discussion, we'll go back into formal session and I'll seek leave of the mover and the seconder to adopt that change. Okay, so that's our second variation. We can't have any more. That's it. They're done. What are we up to? Mover and a seconder. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Okay, and that's the case. I'll head back to councillor De Backer to sum up.
Yes, thank you. And look, I encourage everyone to support the motion, and certainly what I've heard is, yes, people would like to know more, and we'd like to know, how we can assess better the services being delivered, and really just sort of see what we've got and take the process from there. Look, it's a shame this wasn't kind of in the budget process already, but I think this is just a little pause and should it take a little bit longer than so be it. But I think it's really important that we do, as a new elected everybody, have a look at where we want to be. And we're very nimble, and I know our staff work incredibly hard. And it's really to enable us to get value for the dollars, and it's going to be really, really hard in this term with the cost of living pressures that everyone's feeling. And we just want to see what we can do better. So I look forward to the discussion in March.
Thank you, councillor Backer. Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour Against, carried unanimously. Okay, moving on to reports for information. There are 4 reports for information, and we can resolve them on block unless people would like to reserve any of the reports. Would anyone like to reserve item 12.1? Councillor Barnett. Would anyone like to reserve item Councillor Barnett? Would anyone like to reserve item 12.3? Anyone like to reserve item? Oh, sorry, 12.3 for you. Would anyone like to reserve item 12.4? No one, so we're going to vote for that one on block. Can we do that first? Yeah. Do I have a mover for item 12.4? Let me make up like the speech to the motion. Do I have a seconder? Item 12.4. Councillor Tweener-Wynne was like the speech to the motion. Doesn't look like there's any discussions, so let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Unanimously. Okay, going back to item 12.1. That's the bonus.
Yes, I'm happy to move the recommendation, and reason why I'm calling out is that I think it's really good to know what's going on with our Resilient East and our alliance with our other councillors. What jogged my memory was when we talked about the community battery opportunity. I remember that in some other reporting back about our Resilient East, that I think I recollect that was it the Mitcham CEO was going to come and talk to us councillors or workshop or something about community batteries, because they've already, I don't know whether I read it in the CEO's reports or another Resilient East report, because I know, as I said before, there is interest in community batteries.
Is that a question?
Yeah, question.
So through the mayor, not exactly. I think what you're referring to is a briefing that the Mitcham CEO and his staff provided to ERA mayors and CEOs a few months ago concerning their project on not just community batteries, but the Shine Hub initiative, which members may have read about in the Tiser. I know Mitcham has been doing a good job. Mayor Hunter Ross has been pushing out there into the media the fact that Mitcham are essentially sort of acting as a bit of a front for Shine Hub, who are then going out and providing essentially no cost upfront battery and solar infrastructure to homeowners. And in essence, they pay that off over time out of their power bills. It'd be complex. I can't describe it now, but that briefing was provided to ERA mayors and CEOs. I think Mr. Pears and his staff would be happy to come and give you a briefing if you were interested, but frankly, it's probably a discussion the council to consider before that, as to whether or not being a front for a company like Shine Hub is something this council might be prepared to do, or whether residents should just be encouraged to go and visit Shine Hub themselves and deal with them. There are pros and cons, but yes, that briefing's been given, but it's given to ERA.
Yes, because I think, there's a certain level of information sharing now. It's really good to have our mayors and our CEOs involved in that and with our council colleagues. Because I know that there are people out in the community and some other community organisations that picked up about that and said, there'd be a possibility of it being done as like a community information session or something like that. So who do I follow that up with you or with enough staff?
So through the mayor, you're welcome to. I could certainly give you some guidance on how Mitcham are doing it, and that might inform your views as to whether or not you just direct the residents to Shine Hub directly, or whether you think council could take a more active role in that space, noting that obviously there's some resources attached to that. Yeah, I'm happy to have a conversation with you offline about that.
All right, then, thank you. Yes, I said happy to move. Forward.
Thank you, councillor Barnett. Do I have a second? Councillor Twin would like to speak to the motion.
Yes, I do. It's the first time I've heard about this. And it says there's a steering group with member council. Who is the member for our council in the steering group? I've never heard about this, committee.
So, Mr. Delano?
Through the chair, every council, it's a staff member representative. Every council nominates a representative from its organisation that sits on this steering group, of which over there is the, my right, over there, Gabriel is the coordinator for this specific East project. And over there's actually stepped in for the last maybe 3 or 4 months to assist in this role, seconded through LA City Council, and is effectively a small amount of funding that this council provides, so effectively $7,500. We get a really positive impact by aggregation with 8 other councils. And so to answer your question succinctly, it's our manager of assets and maintenance that sits on there, effectively between himself and, or that role and the sustainability officer role. That's where we see it moving forward. If there isn't elected member, well, that's probably the.
Yeah. Because a lot of these things, obviously our community are very, we want to be sustainable, and there's a lot of things and initiatives in here that would be great for us to promote. And like I can see the list of things that we've posted in the last few months. But maybe that's great content for us to use, because I have my own newsletter and I'd like to include some of these things. So is there somewhere that we can access more content of some of the initiatives and some of the things that are happening, especially coming up?
Yeah, I'm sure we can figure something out there and give you better access to that material up front. Ms. Taylor?
Through the Resilient East website, they'll keep you updated. So there's a link provided there, so you can keep an eye on what's going on.
Well,
there.
I've never heard of it before. So.
Yeah, and then you can just table, and that's where we usually get most of our content through there as well.
Anything further, councillor? Is there any further discussion, any points that haven't been re-raised so far? If not, I'll head back to councillor Barnett to sum up.
No.
Thank you. Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Item 12.2, the very successful STEAM trials. Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I was pleasantly, pleased about the outcome. This, when it's sort of first coming up, I was thinking, no, it's going to cost too much, and we're going back to the old chemical stuff. So I was thrilled to read this and about the success of it, and about how the foam had been applied in other areas, outside the trial and all that. So I know that a lot of the community out there, who some of them have complained over, quite a while, and particularly one's parents that their children that use playgrounds. Yeah, they were very pleased with this outcome. So onwards and upwards.
Thank you, councillor Barnett. Do I have a seconder? Let's do it again. Councillor Stanley.
Very happy to second it. I have a quick question. Throughout the report, there seems to be speak of stream and steam. I just need to do a little bit of clarification. Is Foam Stream, as far as I understand, is that the brand or the process, and is steam the carrier? Yeah, like I see somewhere along the line it says administration looked at various options and settled on a foam steam, and then the first line we see the organic foam stream. Is it foam steam or foam stream?
So yeah,
I'm actually disappointed with councillor Barnett to pick up on that one. She's normally the best copywriter of all of you, but
I'll be very busy.
I'll take that on board. I suspect that might be typed draftable error, Mr. Delano. Yes,
Because I did go to the website, and Foam Stream is actually a brand. It's a process and a service.
visit the bathroom.
Yeah. Fantastic. I'm very happy to see this has come out as successful. I have another question. Were there any areas where it didn't work, and did we have to actually at any stage fall back on disulfate as a Was there any stubborn weeds or anywhere that just wouldn't take the steam? Through the chair.
Mr. Delaney?
Through the chair, it's actually quite the opposite. We found this actually worked remarkably well, particularly with respect to the reduction in residual treatments pollen, because separate to separate to steam trial, staff when they investigated the motion, so following Councillor Burnett, I think raised the original motion on notice, and who supported about a steam trial. We looked at different options in this space, and new to this sort of market was this foam steam. I've just seen the actual unit itself is called the Foam Stream.
Yeah.
Company that provide this. That's probably where some confusions on the report, so apologies, I've missed that. But it's a foam steam that we've effectively been working with. The actual foam itself encapsulates and retains the heat for that additional second or two. That really does make a difference in terms of the penetration below the ground. And so we've ended up finding that in areas that we've traditionally had really difficult, problematic hardy weeds that the glyphosate or the Roundup hasn't actually been able to really make a dent in, this foam steam has actually had remarkable results. So our staff were actually quite surprised, and hence why we've recommended that we actually use it in other applications beyond just rolling out the rest of our playgrounds, because we think over time, the diminishing time that's involved with actually, whilst it's some additional time up front with the steam, over time, it's actually going to reduce our efforts in weed management.
Fantastic. And one more question. I mean, this is looking forward. Pursuant to occupational health and safety legislations, is it something that we could have smaller versions of that we could add to our library of things and rent out to residents so they could do their properties? But it's a fantastic. I'll take that on notice. Let you take that on notice. It's a fantastic result for a really good program. Glad you guys pursued it.
Thank you. Any further discussion, Councillor Groot and then Councillor Clapp?
Look, just very briefly, I was rather cynical of this when it came to us. So thank Councillor Barnett being bring it to us. I think it's shown a fantastic result. It'd be good to promote maybe in Australia or somewhere the results of this stuff here would be great. The headline could be GOAT, greatest of all time. So because it is a great solution.
Goat eats weeds.
I thought the stream was the parallel trial of the goats, but obviously we might not be doing that. But look, it is fantastic. So well done to Sam and the team for the
Councillor Black.
Yeah, it's just a question, I may have lost the detail in the report, but a lot of our streets, how many kilometres, Chris? You impressed me.
109.
109 kilometres of streets. We do have a large percentage of them that are gravelled, so the council maintains them. So obviously, start with dealing with my CRMs on weeds, when and there are a few. We try to get on top of them where we can. Have we trialled it where there is gravel? And is there a period of time where the gravel is no longer sterile? Maybe just a question through.
So you're talking about verges?
Verges,
Mr. Delaney?
We trialled it on the gravel.
So through the chair, there wouldn't be a difference to the success rate in regards to whether it's used in gravel verges or effectively mulch areas. The issue is the quantum and the length of roads. Effectively, this thing, we just wouldn't be able to get to the quantum of our city just in terms of the length. So until there is a quicker way of administering this, we're going to be stuck with a Roundup in those, I suppose, possibly determine lower risk areas. But I think our intent is to bring the foam into areas that is higher collision traffic. Obviously, I think reference Prospect Road. In that, maybe other precincts that we look to use the foam steam to sort of remove that interface where the public are a little more likely to be in heavier numbers.
Okay, if there's no further, Councillor Tweenwood.
I just think this is a great news story, and it deserves us putting out there to our community, whether we put it on social media or our profit magazine. I think it's a great opportunity to let our community know that, through this small trial that we did, we invested some money and look at the amazing outcomes. So I really think we should, look at telling the story, especially social media, of our perspective.
Unless there's any further discussion, I'll head back to councillor Barnett to sum up.
Yes, so some good comments there, and I just hope that members will support the budget bit. $25,000.
Thank you, councillor Barnett. Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Item 12.3, Royal Month report, councillor Backer.
Yes, with just a brief amendment, face-to-face meetings, I think we did make. It's essentially.
Sorry, we didn't, yeah.
Yeah, so that could be amended. And the other thing was, we were lucky to be host visit of Her Excellency, the Governor of South Australia, Frances Hardison AC. And I was just wondering if the Mayor might like to tell us about the visit.
Yeah, well, first of all, it was extremely well organised, and the Governor made a point a couple of times on commending the staff on how well planned and well executed the day was. We covered a range of opportunities from community groups, the community garden, the men's shed was great, Broadview Sports Precinct, a good overview of what we do here at council, thanks to Councillor Barnett for field guide duties. And then a walk along Prospect Road, which I believe the Governor enjoyed significantly. We managed to pop into a local florist shop, and Trent happened to be there, and a few other places along Prospect Road. She was very engaged the whole day, from 9:15 in the morning until 3:30 in the afternoon, as was Mr. Bunton. He was very engaged as well. They're both former diplomats, so very well travelled, very well read, very experienced campaigners, and they showed a genuine interest in what we were doing here in the city of Prospect. It was a great day, well attended, the morning tea and the lunch, and everybody who came in contact with her was very pleased to be given the opportunity to meet her and to engage with her. So I think a great success, and thanks goes to the staff who organised the day.
Thank you, that's it, and thanks to the Mayor and CEO and stuff. It's great. Yeah, well done.
I just wanted to add one thing to that. There was a question the other month about advocacy meetings, and I just wanted to give a brief update that there are currently meetings being organised with relevant government ministers with regards to our advocacy priorities. So they're underway at the moment, and I look forward to reporting on some of those meetings over the next couple of months. Councillor Twinwood.
Yeah, and I have a comment about the governor's visit as well.
A brief one, yeah.
I think, yeah, just like, we just had some feedback, well, I've just had some feedback from other business owners, that they were disappointed that she didn't have a stock, and I said that I had to ask on the day as well, like it wasn't planned. But they just said that they had saw her walking down the street and why she didn't go into all the stores, and yeah, there's two business owners said that she was right in front, and why didn't they just come in, or why didn't someone like bring her in or to introduce? So they just thought it was a very selective, and I said I wasn't aware of how it was organised. So that was the feedback I was getting, that yeah, some of the business owners that were in between that didn't get stopped out.
Yeah, I know some of those visits were planned, but some of them were ad hoc, just opportunistic as well. I know that we stopped at Sunny's and said hello to the owner of Sunny's and said hello to the owners of the hairdressing shop along the way.
Yeah.
Some were planned, and only one was planned. But I guess she couldn't stop at everyone is the short answer.
Yeah.
But reasonable feedback, yeah. Do I have a seconder for item 12.3? Councillor Twinwood, would like to speak to the motion? You need to sum up, Councillor Backer. All those in favour? Against? Unanimously. We've done 12.4. Item 13, council member reports and briefings. Are there any council member reports and or briefings? In the case, we'll move on to item 14, motions on notice. Item 14.1, notice of motion, Ampol Service Station site, Maynorth Road. Councillor Nelson, recommendations on page 103. Over to you, Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor. I would guess I'd like to speak to this. So obviously, the motion does speak to itself. But without checking my numbers, I think we pay about $90,000 a year for Campbelltown, circa those numbers. And it's obviously quite a bit of travel involved for our external team. Probably wasting a couple of hours a day per per person. So the cost of having our depot over in Campbelltown is quite an exorbitant cost to council and a lack of efficiencies. So what this motion intends to do is to simply direct the executive team, either the CEO or one of the delegates, to open the dialogue with the owners of the land, being Ampol, and just basically to ascertain what their plans are to that and whether they can give us access, whether we can arrange a Peppercorn lease, whether we can arrange an inclined lease with them to forego rates, or whether we can actually arrange a short-term lease to utilise that space for our depot, to bring our depot back into Prospect and bring efficiencies to the process. So I think it's a fairly simple thing. It's not asking too much, ask for a phone call and a short meeting, just to ascertain what can be done, and obviously then bring it back to council, and we can then gather that information together and see if we can action that. So I'd appreciate support in this, and I recommend it to council.
Thank you, councillor Nelson. Do I have a second, councillor Standen?
Very happy to second this. I might just note that it's probably not Main North Road, Malmesbury. I think it's probably on the wrong side of the road. So we might just correct the typo. Absolutely agree with everything that Councillor Nelson said. The amount of resources that we currently expend with staff transiting from Prospect to Campbelltown is unrecoverable, and it's time that they're not working on our parks and gardens and doing all the things we want them to do and the things they want to do as well. I think they so much prefer doing their actual job than just going backwards and forwards. If we can expedite the process of getting somewhere where they're located, and if that's by finding a site that's not being used or is actually a bit of an eyesore, to be honest with you, if we can jump onto that, that would be great. I know it's probably a long process. I mean, dealing with any of these big multinationals, you're not just going to find the decision makers straight away. But we don't get what we don't ask for. So I wholly commend this motion.
Is there any further discussion? Any points that haven't already been covered? Just councillor De Backer.
Yeah, look, I really like the motion. I'm just looking at number 3, and I'll just tell you my background. I think, look, again, a bit like the service that I think we were kind of anticipating, given it's up for review in April, that the business case would be, I think, going into budget discussions, this is a good solution. Is it the only solution? I don't know. There are two. And there's also the other thing with considerations with staff. So do we need to have accessible toilets for the security arrangements, all that kind of thing? So I'm a bit reserved in number 3. I don't know how to change the motion that might say if it's suitable for use, but I get where Councillor Nelson is coming from, because we need to make a decision, and ultimately it needs to be an executive decision that works. But because it's coming up for review, I understand why this is happening to us. So look, I'll support 1 and 2. I'll probably take it in parts. 3, I'm just concerned that it has to be now needs to.
I had a question from the chair, which might talk to your point. How are we bringing this information back to us? Is it a report to council? Is it just part of the CEO report? What's your?
I think I should take that question, because if the motion is passed in its current form, we're going to have to give effect to it. Essentially, that will rely largely upon the response from Ampol. If the response from Ampol is favourable, or even possible that this is maybe able to be accommodated on terms or otherwise, we'll bring it back to council for discussion. Maybe that discussion will have to take place in confidence if there are commercial and confidence issues that need to be discussed, negotiations unresolved. But certainly, if there's some sniff that any sort of reasonable terms may be possible to make this happen, we'll bring a report back to council. If the answer's a hard no, not on your life, Nelly, go away, I'll probably just let you know and see how that.
And would the CEO report at that point in time cover the potential suitability, or is the CEO's report simply to do with negotiations?
I think you can take it as a given that if Ampol express some possible support for this as an idea, that we would then seek to access the site and have a look at it and give you a more wholesome idea of what it would take to get this done, because clearly council can't enter into a lease without knowing what they're getting themselves in for in terms of capital investment. So we'd need to do some work before we brought it back to you so that we could give you a good sense of exactly what this would mean for council in terms of, you know, if we need to fence it, if we need to, you know, provide some amenities inside for staff, if there needs to be CCTV, you know, if there's some, you know, dangers or risks on the site that we need to address beforehand, there need to be some work done. And obviously without access to the site, we can't do that now. You know, a crack, but we don't know what it's like in there. So I think there'd be a body of work, but that's clearly a waste of time unless Ampol are willing to talk about it in terms of, you know, possible, you know, maybe possible.
Yep.
If it is, then I think we'd be looking at asking them to give us at least some access or a look at the site so that we can do some sort of review. May not be at a high level of detail, you know, depending on where the discussions are at, but we judge that and we'll obviously keep them informed as we go through that process.
Thanks, Ian. Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I agree in principle, particularly parts 1 and 2, but I just have a little bit of the use of the language in part 3, request that the CO delegate request access to the site. I would thought perhaps tone it down a bit to say so request that the CO or the delegate discuss access to the site.
Are you moving essentially amendment to the motion?
Yeah, variation.
Variation. So you're suggesting changing the word request to
Discuss.
delegate discuss access. Okay, I'll just see Lee with the move and the second to see if they'll accommodate that.
It's an interesting one because after discussions with the CEO, it was more or less the wording of that is a little bit short, but it was just basically to request access to the site to see if it's suitable for a council depot. So whether you discuss it or you request it or you ask for it, to me it's the same difference. So people are more comfortable with discuss. It means the same thing.
So you're happy with discuss?
Sure, if that makes me feel better.
I'm happy with what's there. It's quite clear. And,
Sorry, the question requires a yes or no answer.
Yeah. Sorry. So is that a yes or
I'm
no?
happy to accept it, as I say, most people feel more comfortable. I'm happy to change it to this.
Yes.
Yes.
Well,
Okay,
yes.
there's a long yes and a short yes there.
Sure.
So we're changing the word request to discuss.
Yeah, it's really, it's not really a point really now.
Is there any further discussion on the motion before I head back to Councillor Nelson to sum up? In case Councillor Nelson would like to sum up your motion.
Sure. As I say, I think it's mostly speak for itself. I think Councillor Backer can bring up, there is some shortcomings in point 3. That really was just to request, to discuss obtaining access to the site for the relevant staff to undertake an exercise to check the suitability and everything else. So I think that was the intent. So I'd like to thank everyone, and again, I'd like to appreciate the support.
There was a suggestion taking it in parts, so we're happy to take it as one. I'm going to go with that as yes. All those in favour? Against, carried unanimously. Item 15, questions with notice, there are nil. Confidential items, there are nil. Item 17, meeting closure brings us to an end at 8:57.